Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And this was a show that, well, it almost didn't happen. It came real close. We had high winds up here in Maine on the coast. And I noticed in the middle of the night that when I got up that the power was out, and it was out all day. And then I got a notice mid-afternoon or so that your internet is out, so I figured, oh boy, this is going to be real close. So I drove around the town where I live with my laptop, and I called this cafe. They were closing, but I said, hey, by the way, how's your internet working? Because I planned to do the show right outside of the cafe. So they said everything's fine here. So they closed at 2:00. I went over there at 4:00. And one thing they didn't tell me is they shut off their internet. So anyway, I raced home, and lo and behold, the power came on. And just like an hour and a half ago, the internet came back. And hooray, the show is on, and the show must go on. So Robert Powell is our guest tonight. He's going to be talking about his new book, and it's called The Truth About UFOs. It's a scientific perspective. It's geared toward the young. We're going to discuss that. And we're also going to discuss kind of behind the scenes of the SCU, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. And because I think it's slowly kind of moving the dial toward disclosure, possibly. I almost hate using that word. But there seems to me that a lot of people are talking about some breaking news that's going to be coming out. I've heard, I get contacted by people that James Fox is talking about 2021. There's going to be something happening. I'm not really sure. I know little tidbits. I don't think it's going to be something major and earth shattering. I don't want everyone to get their hopes up, because I've been at this long enough to see a lot of hopes get crushed when something looks really promising. And so I caution you to just keep in mind that whatever it is, it may not be such a big deal after all, whatever comes forward. If we keep that attitude, then we're going to be just fine. As far as Robert Powell, he has his biography. He has a BS in chemistry, and he's a former debater, so I'm not going to debate him at all tonight. He has 28 years experience in engineering management in the semiconductor field. He's also had some patents in nanotechnology, which that type of stuff. I love watching things on, documentaries and things about all that. Really fascinates me. Anyway, he's a great guest. He's got a great science background and someone that actually looks into this topic, which I really appreciate. Anyone that has, I want to say the guts, but more and more people are with a science background are looking into this topic because of the things that have moved the needle. And we'll be talking more about that. I want to thank everyone behind the scenes. Bill will be screening over at KGRA Radio tonight. I don't have the screen up. He's going to be taking the calls, and it might be a little bit clunky, but we should be able to get it working tonight. And that's in the last half hour of the show that we'll be taking calls. I want to thank everyone that listens to the show. And also I want to thank people that help out with this show. If you can't help out, I still appreciate you listening. And if you want to be a supporter for a couple of dollars or more a month, and there's also an option for one-time yearly payments. And that's at patreon.com/Martin Willis Podcast UFO. I wish it could be shorter than that, but that's the way it is. And we do have a blog this week from Charles Lear. It's called Broadcasting from the UFO. Now, he always puts the title UFO in all of his titles, and that's my fault. I told him to do that because if I put something up on YouTube and it doesn't have the word UFO in the title, for some reason, it doesn't get the downloads. It's kind of funny, but so he puts the word UFO in all the titles. And this is basically about going back to the WOW signal, all the way from, alleged signals that were picked up by extraterrestrial and things like that. It's kind of an interesting blog. Check it out. And I think that will do it for me for now. I am about ready to bring in my guest. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Hi, Martin. It's good to be back again.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It was like last year sometime you were on the show, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And you have written a book. You're always welcome on the show, by the way. Always love you love you on the show. And I think one of the top shows that I have on YouTube as far as downloads is one with you in it, talking about the Nimitz case.
Oh yeah, we did that show before the New York Times.
That's right. It was like the week before.
At least a week. I think it may have been a month before.
Yeah, yeah. And that was just perfect timing. So
yeah, as a matter of fact, I have to give you credit, Martin, because it was because of your show that I found Kevin Day.
That's right.
He was the first guy I interviewed.
That's right. He commented on the show, and then you looked him up or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's he was watching your show, and that's how I found him. And I was already aware of the sailors from the USS Princeton, but because I had monitored the Princeton Facebook site, but I had not been able to get in touch with any of them until after I did your show. And
there's one more witness that just came forward. See, a lot of people will complain, like, why do you talk about these old sightings? That one's not really that old, 2004 is, and the scope of things is not that long ago as far as sightings go. But I will tell you this, that people are slowly still coming forward to this day. Yeah. And someone recently, I think maybe 2 or 3 months ago, they're going to be on the show eventually, but came forward. And yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that more and more people will come forward, or do you think that's going to be it for a while?
I think you'll probably slowly have more and more people come forward. The problem is, once it gets so much press like this, is they've heard other witnesses talk. And so that kind of shades their testimony to a certain extent. Although, if they're coming forward just to confirm that something happened, then, that's okay. But it's harder to use the details of their testimony if once they've heard other witnesses talk.
I understand totally. That happens in other sightings too. You think of Rendlesham Forest. There's some people that magically all of a sudden put themselves there in the field. And I get that, but I think that if, how do you vet someone like that? That must be really hard, because they could actually have been on the ship during that time and still know nothing. I mean, it's possible.
Right. I mean, because, like, for example, I've got the log of the ship, so I know who all was on the ship. So they could have been on the ship.
Yeah.
And you can determine that, but it's just that our memories are affected by what we hear. And so once it's best. I mean, best case situation is you identify your witnesses and you interview them before they've talked to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know this later gentleman. He has an unusual name. I just can't think of it right now. That came forward. I think Dave Beatty has done a lot of the work with these people, as far as trying to get their story. But again, I understand what you're saying. If you hear someone else's story, unless you have a whole different take or you have something that you're corroborating, it's a tough one.
Right.
Yeah. But still, I think it's, I have said this a number of times, I think it's one of the better cases that in this topic. I'd have to say it's up in the top 5 at least.
Oh, I think so. I think it's in the top 5 cases of history on this subject.
Yeah. And you probably agree with me. It's because of, first of all, it's military, and then all the backup, the radar and the 2 different types of radar, and then the FLR video, and supposedly a high quality digital video that I would love to see, along with a million other people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You think there'll ever be a day that type of video would be released?
That's an excellent question. I mean, personally, I don't see any national security issue involved in it. So I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be released. The same thing with the radar data. I mean, you can't release the nitty gritty details of the radar data because that could compromise national security issues, right? Because an adversary could figure out what our radar's capability is, even though this is, 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's nothing about the radar data that compromises national security if the question is, how fast did the object go, right?
Yeah.
Or how fast did it accelerate? Those facts could be released by the military, and those, I see no reason why that should compromise national security.
And if they already have footage out, albeit it's very short, I don't know how many seconds it is, but it's not very long. And I also understand that was also shortened because of what you just mentioned. Classified information could, they could somehow figure out how to get. I'm not sure what it was, but I heard Lou Elizondo kind of explain why they made the video short, and it was really to curb any information getting out there. Like you're talking about, but I don't know why that would be, why the videos would have to be short, what difference that would make, unless it's some type of readings up on the screen or something like that.
Yeah, I have no idea why that particular one needed to be short. I can say I'm sure that it's a longer video. Not only have different individuals testified to that, but the lieutenant commander who was there with Fravor, and that was Lieutenant Commander James Slate. He had a very good point, and he said the way that's done, it's wheels up, videos on. He said you don't go into a situation and wait to turn on the video at the last moment. You just turn on the video when you leave as you're leaving the ship, and it stays on. So there's no reason why there wouldn't be more video than what's seen.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting if anything else comes out. As far as that goes, I really don't understand if they've already leaked or however that other video got out there. It can't be more earth shattering. Maybe it would be. You could actually see a very clear object doing weird things. Maybe that's what the hesitation is of. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just another thing. As we have said over the years, that the Air Force is probably not going to disclose that they don't have any control over whatever it is that's in our skies.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough thing to admit.
Yeah. Well, isn't this interesting? Well, I want to hear about your book and what was the genesis of writing that book.
Oh, okay. So, the first book that we wrote was UFOs and Government. And that book was really directed towards the academic world, so university students. It's like 500 pages, and it has 1,000 references throughout the book. But this book, and I've got it here just so your viewers can see it. So that's kind of what the book. This is a hardback cover of the book. It's kind of what it looks like on the inside. It's got more photos than that, though. We've got various photographs because kids like pictures, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, this book was geared towards ages 7 to 12. And so there's a little story on what caused me to write it, because it's not like I decided a year ago, okay, I want to write a book for kids. I've got 3 grandkids, and one of them, who's 7 years old, he's the middle one. I was taking care of them back in January of this year before all this COVID stuff started. And so they all know that their grandfather, has an interest in UFOs. And all of them are kind of science minded. And so the middle one, he had checked out a book on UFOs from his library. And I guess he wanted to learn about it. So I picked up the book and I looked at it, and it just was not an appropriate book for little kids. Not only did I not agree with the information that was in the book, but it had all these gray aliens and stories that would just frighten a kid to death. So I told him, I said, his name's Gavin. So I said, Gavin, just take this book back to the library. Do not read this book. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll write you a book about UFOs. And so I promised him I would do that. And so I decided, okay, so the older grandchild is 9. So I said, let me write something for that age group. And for kids that are kind of science minded to start with, at that age, kids don't really know if they're going to like science or not like science, but that's when curiosity starts to kick in. And so I wanted to write a book that is more than just about UFOs. It kind of teaches them a little bit about critical thinking, how to see the world. It kind of shows them that things aren't black and white, that really the world is shades of gray, and that's how you need to approach things in life. So that's kind of what got me started on writing the book. So I started on it probably in March, and I completed the full book by September, and then I published it about 1 week ago. So it's just been published.
Oh, wow. Now, you mentioned the pictures. What else, as you know, everyone has a shorter attention span, especially with all the information. And I blame it on, technology and information just coming at you in every which way. How do you hold the reader? Yeah. And ages 7 to 12, is that
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is age 7 to 12. And you've got a good point, Martin. I mean, Technopoly the average adult on YouTube watches a YouTube video for an average of 1.5 minutes, and then they're gone,
Yeah.
So, and kids have even shorter attention spans, right? So I wrote the book to, for example, I've got about a dozen different really interesting cases, but I don't do pages and pages of these cases. I keep each case to 3 to 5 pages. I throw in pictures whenever I can, and I try to make it interesting to a kid. So I'll say, okay, this happened, and then I'll ask them a question. So why do you think that happened? Or does it make sense that this happened? Or go ask your parents about such and such and see what they think. So I'm trying to get the child to, interact with the book as well as, his surroundings. So that's kind of how I wrote it, to keep it at that age level.
And do you think there's going to be any, I don't want to say backlash, but, if a parent picked this up and looked at it, would they say to the kid, do you think the title of the book helps that, so the parent wouldn't say, hey, what are you reading this silly stuff for? You talk about the scientific perspective.
Right. I think if the parent, any parent, right, were to read the book, I think they would find it interesting, although it is written for a 7 to 12-year-old age group. But there's no strong conclusions drawn in the book, right? It just lays out, here's what happened. And then it asks the kid, what do you think? And it doesn't say, here's the answer or there's the answer. It asks them to use their own, thinking process. I'll give you an example. So one of the cases I used was McMinnville, Oregon.
Yeah.
Right. So you could write pages on that, but it's only about 4 to 5 pages. And for example, I don't mention the city. I mean, what 8 or 9-year-old cares that the name of the city was McMinnville? Plus, it happened in a rural area anyway. So, but I start off and I just tell the story. Here's what happened. And here's the pictures, and they can look at the pictures. And then I have a photograph of the camera that was used. And then I tell them, I do these little sidebars, where I'll say, back then, there's no such thing as a digital camera. These things had something called film. And then I say, go to your parents or grandparents and ask them about cameras with film, right? Because those are the things that it's interesting for a kid to learn. It exposes them to the past and how, history was. And so at the end of the book, I discussed that some people feel that maybe the Trents, who were the family that took the photographs, that perhaps they hoaxed them, right? And I also mentioned that as far as we know, the community around them said they weren't that type of individual. So then I just asked the kid in the book, I said, so what do you think? Do you think they made it up? And I conclude it by saying, to this day, and we can argue both sides of this question, but to this day, we really don't know absolutely if those are real photos or not. Right. So, it's just, I lay out the facts. I don't really try to persuade, the child one way or another.
I've had discussions with Mark D'Antonio about that, those pictures. And he doesn't think they're right. And I don't. This is one time, a lot of times I'll agree with Mark, but I didn't agree with him on why he didn't think they were right. And because I've looked maybe he has something, he can look much closer than I could, but he thinks he can see a hint of a line, or like a fishing line or something on the thing. I don't see that.
I don't see that at all. And as a matter of fact, a French group, Francois Louange, who I know well, they actually use computers to do it, and they can't see it visually, but they feel like that statistically they could establish that it's a line there. But then Brad Sparks, I don't know if you know Brad, but he's an aeronautical engineer out in California. He's gone through Louange's report and says, no, here's all the mistakes, and he lays them out. So I think it's still up in the air about it.
Yeah. Here's a question that came in. Do you think a curriculum can be made around the book's core? This is your book, of course.
Yes, I think you could make a curriculum around it. If I was going to teach a group of kids about it, what I would do is I would lay out a case, that occurred. And then I would have the kids I would just line up, okay, what's the positives and the negatives? What are the reasons this may not be true? And what are the reasons that it is true? And have them list that, right? And then have them discuss it. I think it's an excellent tool. I think the whole UFO topic is an excellent tool for kids to use and learn how to use critical thinking on both sides of it, right? You don't want, on the one hand, to just accept everything. On the other hand, you don't want to automatically reject everything.
Right. I wasn't even into UFOs when I was a little kid, and I can tell you that I would have been into that type of situation, where you can look into it and then you have like a debate about what it could be or something like that. I would have been very interested in, I always like sciencey type things, and I definitely would have been interested in that. What are some of the other cases you talk about in the book?
Oh, one of the other cases I talk about, there was a case in 2013 in Ontario, Canada, that involved a scientist who actually, I've met the guy in person. He has a R&D lab, and he has contracts with the Department of Defense. So he's remained anonymous all these years. But he and two other guys were out hunting in Ontario.
Is it this one right here, right?
Yes, it's that case right there.
Yeah. Why don't we go into the, I appreciate you bringing this up as part of but can we go into deep details about this case? Because I find it totally fascinating.
It is. It's a very fascinating case. So yeah, we could go into deep detail, but before I do it, here's why I picked certain cases, because I thought they had good components that were good for young kids.
Yeah.
Right. So there are no abduction stories in this book. Just let everyone
so they can
know
sleep.
Right
Yeah.
up front.
Yeah.
But what was nice about this case is we've got some interesting drawings that have been made so that you've got pictures for these kids. The key witness is a scientist. I think that's a valuable thing for, kids to know, that scientists have also observed these type of objects. And then there's also electromagnetic effects that happen during this. So I think it's good for the kids to think, okay, electromagnetic effects, what is that? What are examples of electromagnetism? Those kind of things. And then lastly, in this incident, there's a time when he takes out his gun and he's got a scope on it. And the main witness, who's a scientist, he's not taking out the gun to shoot the object. He's taking it out because he's got a 9X lens on it. So he's trying to get a closer up look at the object. Well, a couple of his two buddies, they say, shoot it, right? Which he doesn't.
Yeah.
So I thought that's an interesting thing, for kids to contemplate, right? Is that a smart thing to do? Why should you do that? Or why should you not do that, right? It's all to get their creative juices going. But to go back to the case, the first time I ever heard about this case was in 2015. And at that time, I was part of MUFON. And Phil Leach actually found the case. Phil is a retired police investigator in Indiana. And so he wound up being the guy assigned the case. And when Phil first got the case, he contacted me because after he talked to the witness, he felt like he needed some support on the case. So I gave him, support, and he explained the case to me. And the first thing to me was, wow, is this really true? Right. And so I was like, okay, I want to come up and meet the guy, because I want to verify this guy is who he says he is. And so I verified that he is a scientist. He does have DOD contracts. He does have an R&D lab. He does have engineers that work for him. So this guy, and he's got plenty of money. This guy has no motivation to make up a UFO story.
Right.
There's just no motivation for it. And he's never reported one other than this incident. So I went and met with him. I was impressed by him. He has a number of patents. And that's what got me started in doing the investigation. Now, the primary witness, he actually wrote about a 40-page white paper on what happened.
Really?
Yeah. So, and it's such a long case, Martin, I'm not even sure where to start. I can just tell your viewers basically what happened, I guess, for starters.
Sure.
So you've got these three guys. They're up in the wilderness of Ontario. The nearest town was probably 20 miles away. They're in the wilderness. There is no cell phone coverage. That tells you how far away they are from civilization. So they're out and they're hunting black bear. So that's why they're there. So he uses his Sony video recorder to video the these black bears that they had shot, etc. And then they put the bears in their truck. They've got a large Dodge truck, and they're driving to meet another party of hunters that are out there with them. There's about 6 guys total. So on the way to their destination, the sitting in the back seat by himself in the truck is the primary witness, the guy who's also a scientist. And his 2 friends are in the driver's side and passenger side. He notices something kind of out on the right-hand side of the truck, and he looks over there and he sees a very bright light. And his first thought was, okay, it's 9:30 at night. I'm in the middle of nowhere. What is a helicopter doing, and why is it approaching us, right? I mean, if you put yourself in his place, that's not a comfortable feeling, because you're wondering, what in the heck's a helicopter doing out here in the middle of nowhere, right? So they're but he doesn't say anything. He's just made mental note. They're going down the road. The light keeps getting closer and closer and brighter until it crosses in front of them. And at that point in time, it's clear to him this is not a helicopter. And so the driver stops the truck. So the truck stops, and they're looking at an object, the shape of a barbell. It's like one disc here, another disc here, and you've got a bar connecting the 2 discs. I mean, that's as non-aerodynamic of an object as I can imagine you could create.
Yeah.
And so he's looking at this object, and he notices it's got a purple haze all around it. So he feels like it's a plasma encircling the object. The distance he estimates about 400 feet, because there's trees everywhere, and it's based on where it's at. He knows that it's in the tree line. So we know that so he knows that. He gets out his the first thing he does is he takes out his Sony camera. And his camera, as soon as he turns it on, it's on for a half a second, and then it clicks off. He does it again, same thing. Then he grabs his cell phone, Motorola cell phone, and see if he can take an image of it with the cell phone. But when he grabs his cell phone, it's like hot, as if it was, and it's acting as if it's just now booting up. So his cell phone's not operating. Then they have a Motorola radio, which they also grab because they want to talk to the other group that's out there somewhere. Well, the Motorola radio phone is dead. So at that point in time, he says, well, okay, I've got my rifle gun sight, and I'll use that to at least look at the object closer. So he gets it out, and that's when, his friends tell him to shoot it, and he says, no, we're not going to shoot it. And he starts making detailed notes. And this guy makes extremely detailed notes in the paper that he sent me. And I actually, just to be safe, I redid his calculations on the size of the object, independent of the way he calculated it. And I came out with the same number he did, approximately 150 feet, plus or minus 10 or 15 feet. So this was a very large object. The other interesting thing about the whole sighting is that there are like sparklers being emitted from the object. But the sparklers don't come out of a certain end of the object like they do in a jet, right? Where you have you have your exhaust fumes coming out of the jet engine. Instead, the sparklers come out of the opposite direction of wherever the object's moving. And this, if you can imagine, okay, here is a barbell, and as it moves, it's slowly rotating. So your barbell's slowly rotating as it moves, right? I mean, this is just about as crazy as you can get in terms of a strange story. So it's at the point of this guy either made this up or it happened. I don't see how you go anywhere in between. And that's why I went up to visit him to verify all this. So as this object's turning, the sparklers always come out of the opposite direction as it moved, of where it's moving towards. So that's, the object, this continues until the object moves out of sight, and then it goes higher up into the sky and disappears at a high rate of speed. That's kind of the end of the story.
They always seem to disappear at a high rate of speed, don't they?
Yeah.
So many.
Yeah. Now, one thing he did do is once the object got farther away, he tried to reuse his video camera. And once it got, I think he said about somewhere around 1,200, 1,500 feet distance, which is about a quarter mile, his video camera came on. And he was able to video, but he was not getting any, he only got audio.
Oh, geez.
The video screen was noise. And when I went to his place of business, we actually hooked up his camera to a oscilloscope, and you could see, the red, green, blue color formations that should have been into the video camera, but nothing was there because we could see it when he had photographed the black bears.
Wow.
But you could hear him talking with the other witnesses. And so he still has the original camera. He's got it locked in a safe, and he's still working on it. He hopes to figure something out.
Now that's funny how it's almost like an intentional malfunction. It just seems like that.
Well, he has a good theory on it, which I would kind of, I think's a reasonable, theory. What he believes is in the beginning, he was so close to it, since there's a plasma, he sees this plasma that's all around the object. He suspects that it's emitting an EM field that's so strong that it's interfering with his camera. It's probably like inducing a current into the camera, and the camera probably turns itself off to prevent damage to itself, right? So it's probably a safety mechanism in the camera. Well, once the object gets farther away, right, your EM fields drop off by the inverse square law. So it gets far enough away, the field's going to get weaker, and so he's able to turn his camera on. So the camera's mechanism to keep, an overloading current's working, but there's still enough current being generated in the camera that's interfering with the video system. That was, his theory.
Wow.
Which I think is reasonable.
I'm popping this image up. This was similar to what someone called a barbell type UFO, which was a real bizarre sighting. I think it was in the 1980s this happened. But also someone commented that Don Ecker's show right here, they're saying that one of the regular call-in friends of Don Ecker's says he has seen a dog bone shaped craft, which I would think is, similar to barbell.
Yeah, it's sometimes I'll call it a dumbbell, a barbell, or a dog bone. And actually, I found it so interesting, right? Because myself personally, until that time, I'd never heard of a barbell, dog bone, dumbbell shaped UFO. But that got me interested. So I went and started researching, looking for those specifically. And I've found since going back into the 1950s, about somewhere around 30 to 40 cases reported of that type shape. And the thing that's interesting about that to me, Martin, is right. Some people like on the flying saucer disc, they say, well, that's just people, they've read about it in the news, so they're just kind of repeating what they've heard, and it's their imagination running away with them. But here you've got a very strange shape, which has not received a lot of publicity. And yet you've got 30 to 40 cases reported of it over the last 50 to 60 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when someone talks about a lot of times, well, sometimes the subject will come up, why do you think, during this time there were mostly disc sightings, and now there's, triangular sightings, and now you put in something like this, or the orbs, or, there's all the different types of things. And, then there's the real unusual ones, also the square box type ones, or rectangular ones. That nothing seems, except for the discs and triangles, nothing seems to make sense as far as aerodynamics. But, if you're traveling through space, I guess that's not needed if that's where they're traveling from.
Well, even the discs and the triangles are not always in some of the good reports are not always aerodynamic. I mean, there have been several in Project Blue Book where military pilots talked about a disc that it was traveling aerodynamic, and then it flipped up 90 degrees on the side, and it's just traveling with maximum air resistance, right? The flat side going forward.
Yeah.
And then triangles. One of my favorite cases happened up in your area in Maine. And it was a triangle that before it took off, it just started spinning. I mean, why would you do that?
Like
right?
you're throwing a horseshoe spinning. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Strange. Wow. So up in Maine, I never heard of that one in particular. But.
Yeah, that one happened it's either 2013 or 2015, and it was in Augusta.
Oh,
Maine,
yeah.
Your capital.
It's an hour away from me. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was witnessed by a man who had a PhD or has a PhD in mathematics, and he was with his wife and 3 kids, and his wife was driving, and they were headed north. I think it's I-95.
Yeah, I-95. Yeah.
Out of Augusta. And as they were headed north, they saw this triangular object, kind of like a pyramid. And it had the typical 3 white lights on the corners. And the object, they had to they were wanting to turn around, but they had to go about 1 mile, 2 miles up. And so they finally did. They turn around, and the object's still there. And then they see it moving, and as it starts to move, it begins to rotate, and right before it rotates, the red light on the bottom comes on, and then it just zips off and is gone in like 2 seconds.
So bizarre. And a lot of them have the lights. This is another case right here. It's not really a very good picture, but you can see this is the Polaroid that was taken in Australia, the Berman or something case. I forget. That was in James Fox video, his documentary. But that's another one that went up on its side and just took off, at a high rate of speed as they always seem to do. And
it's just crazy, because it's like there's one that I believe this was out of Blue Book also. It was a officer in Germany, and he was on. It wasn't an officer; it was like a sergeant. He was on duty, on tower duty, and this triangle is coming towards him, and then it just starts like flipping over as it's moving through the sky. And the first thing you ask is like, okay, if you're making this up, why would you make that up? That is so crazy. Yeah. So it makes you think, either someone's making it up or it's real. I can't imagine what type of astronomical body or aircraft or whatever would make someone think that they were looking at a triangle that began to flip over. Well,
I guess it goes back to so many mysteries about this, in the way of, there's never the breaking of a sound barrier when something shoots off real quickly, or when they pass between different mediums like water and sky, things like that.
Yeah.
All these things that don't make any sense. And if there's no broken sound barrier at high rates of, well over the speed of sound. They have a way of traveling, obviously, that is not going to affect the physics as we know it, I guess.
Well, I mean, it may still be physics as we know it, but however they're doing it, they don't appear to be interacting with the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Right? Because our understanding of physics, if you're moving through the atmosphere at an extreme rate of speed, there's going to be a high amount of friction and heat generated. And some of these objects are moving so fast that they should be a ball of fire, especially when you're in the lower atmosphere. Yet they're not. So
going back to
on physics, they can't be in the atmosphere, really.
Right. This is a better picture of what I was talking about earlier.
Oh yeah, that is better.
Yeah. So I think gravity plays a part in that too, possibly. I mean, defying gravity in a way. There just seems to be a lot of things that kind of all fit together.
Yeah. Well, now I'm not a physicist; I'm a chemist, but I don't think anti-gravity is the answer on any of this, because, for example, when you're in outer space, right? If you just took a Saturn moon rocket and just stuck it up in space magically, and there's no gravity there, right? You can't get extreme accelerations just because there's no gravity. You still have the inertia that you have to overcome of the object itself. So how that's done, I have no idea, but eliminating gravity does not allow you to rapidly accelerate. And some people will kind of try to indicate that, but to my knowledge, that's not the case at all. The only way I could think that you could rapidly accelerate is somehow you have to drive the inertia of the object in question towards zero, right? So, for example, if you took a spaceship and if it weighed nothing, I'm just imagine you could make it weigh nothing. Well, now I could shine a beam of light on it, right? And if the mass is basically zero, the photons in a beam of light will impart their speed and energy to that object, and suddenly it will accelerate at very close to the speed of light. And that's kind of what these things do. They're accelerating at extreme speed. So I don't know how you do that. That's a pure guess on my part, but I don't think anti-gravity does that.
Yeah. I've always wondered, I don't want to really get off on a whole different topic, but I've always wondered how space travel happens in space. Like, if space is empty, how does it propel itself, like a rocket propel itself through space if it's empty? What is it pushing against?
Well, that's Newton's law of if here's my rocket and I'm kicking out propellant at this end, then this side is going to go in the opposite direction. The whole problem in a chemical rocket is you cannot go in this direction any faster than you're kicking stuff out in that direction, right? Huh. So if the maximum speed you can kick out this exhaust is 200, let's just say about, I don't know the actual number, a physicist could tell you, but let's just say it's about 50,000 miles an hour. Well, you'll never accelerate your rocket ship beyond 50,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, I can understand how that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. The way we've done that on some craft, and it takes a very long time, is they use an ion engine. So it's kicking out ions, and they're traveling at close to light speed. But it's just a few atoms, right? It's not a whole lot of atoms, and you got this mass. See, here's where inertia comes into play. So you're having to shove this mass through space, and given enough time, right, it'll keep getting a little faster, and it will finally get at the same speed the ions are kicking out the back end. But imagine if your ion ship there, right? Imagine if the front of it had zero mass. Well, now as these ions kick out the back end, he's going to move forward very quickly, approaching the speed of light. Here's a real-time or real-life example, I guess you might see. There's a breakthrough project. It's called, oh gosh, I can't remember the exact name of it, but the basic idea, here's the whole idea, is to get a very small rocket or a very small object to Alpha Centauri in 20 years. So it would be moving at 20% the speed of light. And the way they do that is, rather than have a big spaceship, they're basically propelling a computer chip, which you're talking about something that only weighs a gram. So
is this the laser thing?
Right. The mass is very low, and you put this giant sail connected to this little computer chip, in essence. And when the lasers hit that sail, right, the laser light is moving at the speed of light, and normally that doesn't really move anything, right? But because this chip is so light and the sail is like 100 nanometers in thickness, it's actually able to shove that little chip to 20% of the speed of light in, I believe, in 11 minutes.
Wow.
So that's a huge acceleration.
Yeah.
But again, that kind of goes back to the thing of, you have to reduce the mass in order to be able to do these types of rapid acceleration.
Yeah. I know this show isn't just about, I feel like I want to keep asking you questions on this. Like, what is the difference between mass and gravity, or weight and mass? But I think we probably ought to move on and talk about that off air. We got about 3 minutes before we go into a break. And so let's just wrap up about talking about some other cases that you have in this book. How many chapters did you say there were?
Well, I do about 11 or 12 cases.
And each one's a chapter?
Each one is like 3 to 5 pages.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I don't break them into individual chapters. They're just kind of continuous, but I've got little markers, as you go through.
Uh-huh.
Some of like the Japanese airline case.
Oh, yeah.
I touch on that
JAL 1620 something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do that case. The 4, what were they? The National Guardsmen up in Ohio that were in a helicopter when they run into a large cigar-shaped UFO.
Why don't we talk about that when we have, like I said, we got a couple minutes, because I can't picture what that one is.
Oh, okay. This one, probably if I mention the guys, their name to you, then you may remember that case. But it's there's 4 National Guardsmen, and they're taking a helicopter back, and they see this light very far off. Within just a few seconds, the light is suddenly right in front of them, and the captain who's flying he's the co-pilot of the helicopter. He takes the controls away from the co-pilot because he's decided that there's an aircraft that's going to hit them head on.
This isn't the coin case, is it?
Yeah, the coin case.
Oh,
yes,
okay. Yeah.
And so that's the name I couldn't recall. And so, he dives as fast as he can in a helicopter, which is, you can only do so much in a helicopter. And all of a sudden this object's in front of them, and it bathes their helicopter in a green light. And the windshield of the helicopter, that's all they see is the object. I mean, it's filled up their entire windshield. So this thing is close and it's large. Let me turn this thing off so it doesn't ring. I just think that's a very interesting case that kids would kind of enjoy, because you've got good witnesses, and it's so close to them, right? Imagine an object so large that it fills up your entire windshield.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, how do you misinterpret that? Some people said, they misinterpreted, they were looking at Venus. Well, no, I don't think so. So, either those guys are idiots or there was something filling up their full windshield.
That's right. And it's always poor Venus. Venus always gets blamed.
Yeah. I mean, it even got blamed for having phosphine on it not long ago. So now.
That's right. That's right. All right. All right, everyone. So we're going to be right back right after the break here. And I'm going to play, since I've mentioned his name a number of times, I'm going to play James Fox for you people over at YouTube. So hang in, everyone. We'll be right back right after these messages.
I knew this was breaking news for the front page of the New York Times.
My gosh. Look at that thing.
We need to accept that we are not alone in the universe.
The federal government, all these years, has covered up everything. It's very, very bad for our country.
There have been visitation, crashed craft, material recovered.
It was not anything from this earth. All I could do is keep a mouth shut.
The public has a right to know.
There's a tremendous resistance. I guarantee every one of them knows that this event happened.
Hiding these dark secrets even from elected presidents.
They came running up here in such a panic. Child can't make that up.
Declassified government documents confirm ongoing UFO incursions at nuclear weapons sites.
Are you saying that there's some evidence that still hasn't seen the light of day?
I'm saying most of it hasn't seen the light of day.
These things are real. They're here. This is happening now.
Yes, that video is available to stream, and I think it's Vimeo is where you want to get it if you want to get the extras with it. It's still available out there. I highly recommend it. It's a great movie. Some people have said, well, there's nothing new in it, but there's actually quite a few different things that I've learned. Anyway, we'll be coming right back on the show here in just a minute.
About 40 seconds, Martin.
All right, thanks. Might as well talk a little more during the break here for YouTube. Next week, we have Melanie Kirkdorfer, and she'll be on. She was the one at the Berkshire's UFO. So the woman who was a young girl by the lake getting ice cream, and all of a sudden she vanished with her sister, I believe, from the car. She's got a great story. I talked to her on the phone the other day. Should be a good show.
Here we go. We're coming back.
Yep.
In 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Welcome back to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And coming right back, we have Robert Powell. Welcome back, Robert.
Hi, Martin.
Yeah. Interesting that the coin case. I always thought that was such a fascinating case. And I remember my friend Lee Spiegel interviewed him on his, he's got an album, his record album from 1977 or something like that, where he actually personally interviewed him about that case. And, I mean, that's horrific to have something like that happen. You must think that's the end. I mean, what else can you think in a case like that?
Yeah, I consider that one of the top 10 cases also.
Yeah. And what was didn't they raise up like so many feet in a very short period I mean, there's no way they could have climbed as fast as that.
Right. He noticed on his altimeter after the object had left that he was like 1,500 or 1,900 feet higher than he was.
Yeah.
And he had no explanation for how that happened.
Yeah. I'm wondering why that wasn't investigated more, or was it heavily investigated? Do you know?
As far as I know, it was not heavily investigated.
I mean, talk about, national security issues.
Yeah. I mean, it was investigated a lot by various civilian investigators, right? I think there's someone in CUFOS, I can't remember her name. She did a good report on it. But as far as I know, it wasn't heavily investigated by the military.
Did he do a lot of talking on that subject himself, and was it corroborated by other people on the crew?
Yes, yeah. The rest of the crew corroborated. I mean, all four National Guardsmen.
And what about the helicopter itself? Did it sustain any type of issues from that?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, there may have been an issue with the compass on it that may not have corrected itself. I'm not certain. But other than that, I'm not aware of any permanent problem with the helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something. Getting back to your book, just a couple more questions. Do you think that this helps the person reading it, the child or even an older person reading it? Do you think it helps guide them in a direction where they're going to do more research into the topic?
Yeah. I try to bring as much science for that age group as I can, right? You can't go heavy into science at that age, but you can get their curiosity going. So like I explained to them the difference between, for example, facts and a hypothesis versus like a theory. And so like I tell them, you might have a hypothesis that earthworms like the shade. So you can create an experiment where you divide up a box and you count the earthworms, when it's the daytime, which side are they on, and how many are on the shaded side. So I give them an idea of how that works. And also at the end of the book, I tell them if they want to learn more about UFOs, the first thing they should do is study science in school. So that's,
wow.
I think we need more kids that go into the field of science. So I said, whether you like geology or astronomy or physics or chemistry, doesn't make any difference. As long as you study science, you'll gain the right tools and knowledge to learn more about UFOs. And then I give them a list of books that, if they want something a little more meaty to learn, because the idea here is that this book just gets them going.
Yeah.
And then I list other books that are more advanced that they could begin to read. So that's kind of the idea on this.
And did you, like, for instance, let's say the coin helicopter case, did you have, like, at the end of there, for more information on this case, go here or something like anything like that? As far as, most people get their information from the internet. It's kind of a scary place sometimes to get the right information.
That's true. No, I didn't do that. I just recommended specific books that they should go read. And some of those books have the coin case. For example, our book, UFOs and Government, is one. But I listed that one farther down because I wanted books that were a little easier, right? Because this is a 7 to 11-year-old age group. So I list them from easiest to more difficult.
And yeah, I like that title, UFOs and Government. And that was also, was that science minded too for the younger people as well?
UFOs and Government is really directed towards college age kids.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, there's over 1,000 references, and it's written like a history book. So it's much more matter of fact and drier. It's much drier than like this book. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the SCU, which you're involved in. And can you explain to the listener that is unaware of exactly what that is, what it is, and who's involved, please?
Sure. So the SCU stands for the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies. And it was created in September of 2017 by myself and 2 other individuals. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. Today, it has over 100 members. Most of those members have science backgrounds. Over half have advanced degrees, that's masters or PhDs. About 16% are from other countries. We have members who are part of NASA, part of the European Space Agency. We have an ex-NORAD member. We've got several members that are part of actually security. What else can I tell you about it? I guess the key thing is, I think, to understand that in our organization is a good example that people with science backgrounds are interested in this subject. This is not a subject that all scientists avoid. We have university professors in SCU that are part of our overall team. And we're over 100 now, and we really didn't go out trying to recruit people. They find us, and then we have a board of directors meeting every month. And whenever someone applies, we review, their resume, their view on the UAP subject, and we say, yay or nay, and I think we're at 105, 106 members right now.
Yeah, I've gotten involved just in helping with the streams, and the topics are just fantastic. And I was thrilled that Linda Zimmerman became a member of the team there as well.
Yeah, the name rings a bell. It's hard for me to keep track of.
Yeah, she's the one I connected you with. Animal science.
Right. Yeah, and actually, Martin, I've sent her a couple of cases I just happened to run across when I was going through some Blue Book cases that were good animal cases. So I sent them to her. And, she liked that.
Another fascinating topic. I mean, there's so many when it comes to this. But what are some of the? I know that, like I said, I've helped host some of the talks. But what are some of the scientific takes on this? Like Michael Masters is very interesting. The time travel thing.
Right.
He's part of that. And there's several people that have been on this show, Kevin Knuth, and many others. But there's all types of ways of looking at this topic is kind of what I'm getting at.
I mean, within SCU, there are people across a full range of their thoughts on the topic, right? I mean, some people may think the ET hypothesis is the most likely. Others like Michael Masters think, well, perhaps time travel might be the best explanation. And this is important. Within the SCU, we understand what a hypothesis is, and it doesn't mean that we believe that's necessarily true, right? So when Michael Masters says, okay, you could explain this with time travel, he's saying, okay, time travel could explain it, but he's not saying that is the answer, right? And a lot of times in the public, people don't always understand that, especially in the media. If you say the ET hypothesis, they assume that you're automatically saying there's little green aliens in the flying saucers.
Yeah.
Well, really, all the ET hypothesis says is based on what we know of extrasolar planets and what we know of the universe. A hypothesis is that could be, not that it is, it could be the origin of these craft.
Right. I don't know if you saw this, and I didn't see this in particular, but I know that Obama was asked about UFOs on with Jimmy Kimmel, and I'm wondering if this is this a new interview with Stephen Colbert. Did you happen to catch that?
No, yeah. I didn't catch it, so I can't really comment on what he said.
Yeah.
But, for all politicians, I don't think on that subject they're ever going to comment very concretely. It's always going to be kind of a wishy-washy answer, I would suspect.
Yeah. Well, when Jimmy Kimmel asked Obama, what he thought. He goes, if I was sitting there, and then he's like laughing how unlikely that would be in the president's office. The first thing he would do is find out what's going on with UFOs. That's what Jimmy Kimmel says to Obama. Well, friend of the show, Ben Hansen, spent 40 some odd hours going over that clip to do body language with his training in the FBI, Obama's body language. And he says that he was very uneasy talking about it. Basically you could see the rate of the breath rate, the possible heartbeat rate rising and all that, shortness of breath, things like that when he was talking about the topic.
Yeah, and I could believe that. Of course, what you don't know is why is he uneasy? Right?
Yeah.
Is it because he knows something, or is it because he knows, wow, just talking about this subject is not good for my political career. I'm not easy.
Exactly. It could be that exactly. It's very, very true. It's nothing. Nothing that I saw another question here. Nothing you can get any firm answers from at all. I can't. There was another question besides this one. Have you ever found any UFO footage interesting yourself?
Well, to me, the most I'll mention two. One is the Nimitz video from 2004. I find that one very interesting, but not because of just the video. If all we had was that video, then I would be like, eh. But you've got so many witnesses, and you had an event that happened that day that makes the video much more useful. Another video is the 2013 Aguadilla video, which we analyzed. This is over Puerto Rico.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that because
that's a Homeland Security.
You spent a lot of time on that one. Can you bring that up and just kind of go into detail on that if you don't mind?
Sure. So Morgan Beal, who's part of the SCU also, was able to obtain this video. It's a video that came from Homeland Security. And apparently the video had just been circulating within their offices, just passing it around. And so he got a copy of it. And what you see in the video initially is not very exciting. I mean, you just see this object moving through the air. And when I first saw it, it's a 3-minute video. I'm watching it. So, okay. It's an IR video. And then you see the operator zoom in on it, and it starts to go over the ocean. Okay, so, and then it hits the water, and to the naked eye, you don't even see the water move. It just goes into the water. And I was like, okay, that's pretty weird. And then it comes out of the water. Again, there's no real splash. There's the Aguadilla video there. And I'll just do a footnote here. When we went in and analyzed it in detail, there is movement in the water, but it's just minute. Okay, so it comes out of the water. And then, and here was the weirdest thing of the whole video. The thing splits in half.
You're right.
And when I first saw that, it was like, wow, now that is strange. So we spent a year and a half analyzing this video. And I took the video, we broke it out frame by frame. So you've got 30 frames for every second of video. And when it splits, right, I'm looking at every individual frame, and you get pixel values for every pixel on that frame. So you've got a frame with thousands of pixel values. The object itself, at the time it split, consisted of about 35 pixels. So there's this isn't just 2 or 3 or 4 pixels. There's 35 pixels. And you get a value from 0 to 250. So the bigger the number in this particular video, the colder, the smaller the number, the hotter. And whenever you follow this object through the video, anywhere through it, there's always a core within the object that's hotter than the rest of the object. So there's a core heat area. So as it's as it's coming out of the water, you still see its heat area. And frame by frame, the heat area begins to expand and the entire object begins to expand until it's roughly double its original size. So instead of 35 pixels, we're now looking at 70 pixels.
Is this up on the screen now for YouTube?
Yeah.
Is this?
That's it there. If I remember where you're at on the video, that's let's see, where are you at on that? I would say that's right before it starts to split in half, I think, but I'm not positive at the moment. But
it looks almost like a cluster in a way.
Well, yeah, because you're looking at about 60, 70 pixels there. If you were to increase the magnification.
So it's the pixelation is mostly doing that.
Right. Yeah. And so the object, like I said, the heat area increases, right? And the object is doubled in size and the heat area is doubled in size. The next thing that happened was really weird, is frame by frame, the heat area starts to split apart. In the report, I call it similar to mitosis, which in biology is what a cell does right before it splits into two cells.
Mm-hmm.
The nucleus splits, and then the whole cell splits. And that's exactly what this looked like. So I don't have an explanation. There's a lot of people who've tried to explain it. For example, they'll say, that the object didn't really split in half. It was a reflection, right? And then another explanation was, the object, there was really two objects, and then they just finally came apart after 3 minutes, right? So there's all these, but none of those explanations are good explanations for what's going on in the video. Because if, for example, if you had two objects tied together that finally split, well, for starters, there was a full 3 minutes, almost 3 minutes of video prior to that. And you never see, this is a high quality military IR video. You never can separate the two objects. They look like one object until you get to this point, and then they split. So that doesn't make sense. We've looked at every possible explanation, and we've never come up with any.
And what about speeds? Speeds are erratic behavior besides the water.
The speed, the highest speed it ever gets to is like 120 miles an hour. So the speed itself is not unusual, other than two things. One, this is at night, and this object is moving right near trees and telephone poles at speeds from 60 to 100 miles an hour in the middle of the night. And it has no light source on it. And it's able to not impact anything. That's, if you could imagine something at 30 to 40 feet in altitude, cruising through your neighborhood at 80 to 100 miles an hour at night and not hitting anything, that's pretty good. The other thing that was unusual about the speed is that when it impacts the water, there's a very slight reduction in speed. It hit the water at around 105 miles an hour. So we see it drop to about 85, and then it continues to move at around 85. And when it comes out of the water, then it's at around 65. But you don't see this big splash. You just see a very faint water movement as it goes in. And we thought, okay, a drone might be able to do that. But what a drone can't do is come back out of the water at high speed, right? Unless there's a rocket or something like that, right? Like an ICBM coming out of a submarine does that, but you've got rocket propellant to break through the water and keep going up.
Yeah.
There's drones that will go into the water and come back out, but they kind of like float up to the top, and they just they finally break the plane, and then they get in the atmosphere and start moving again. But I'm not aware of anything that can just move through the water at that speed and just keep on going through the water.
And what about propulsion? Did you see any signs of propulsion?
Mm-mm. No, there was no signs of propulsion.
That's such a bizarre case.
Yeah.
And was it like, did you say 4 of you that were working on this for a year and a half?
Yeah, there was 4 of us that worked on it for about a year and a half.
And it just basically comes down to inconclusive.
Yeah, we have no idea what that is. The only thing we can say is we've eliminated every possible explanation we could think of, from birds to drones to balloons to what have you.
Yeah, and what is the common skeptic say? Do they bring up all those things, balloons? Because I think I heard that myself.
The common skeptic, it changes over time. So they started off with the balloon theory, and then that didn't work too well because you've got a heat source. The center area is hotter than the rest. Plus, in infrared with a balloon, the bottom of the balloon is going to, and we demonstrated this by actually doing a balloon test, the bottom of the balloon will be warmer and the top will be colder. That's because infrared is reflecting the basically black body radiation of the atmosphere. So it's cold on top, and on the bottom, it's reflecting heat coming off the land. So it looks warmer on the bottom. So that was the first theory, which that didn't work. So then the next theory, I think a lot of the skeptics came up with was, and let me back up, Martin. I mean, I'm a skeptic. These guys aren't skeptics. They're what I call debunkers. In other words, they've already decided it can't be. And so what do I have to do to say it can't be? It's not an open-minded approach.
Yeah.
So then he said, okay, it must be 2 lanterns, right? Like Chinese lanterns tied together. And so they're flying through, and bear in mind the wind speed on this day is 15 miles an hour.
15
miles an hour. Anyone who's ever flown a Chinese lantern knows that I don't even think you could get it off the ground, let alone keep it in the air, because what happens is these things are very fragile, and the wind is just going to collapse it, and your candle is just going to drop to the ground.
Yeah.
So there's no way it could, that could explain this. And then, but to make the theory go further, they say, okay, so I've got these 2 Chinese lanterns, they're stuck together. And then right when they get over the ocean, right? So when they're over the ocean, the plane's looking at them. Now they split apart. But how did they go into the ocean? Oh, okay. Well, at first they said clouds, because clouds break, will stop IR, which is true. And I said, well, I don't think so, because I can see the ocean waves. So how can the cloud, block the object, but not block the ocean waves, right? So then the next one they came up with is, oh, okay, the reason it looks like it went into the water is because the camera just lost its ability to focus properly, and so the object just disappeared. Right? I mean, it's just like I mean, for me, it's almost like it's the flip side of people who will say anything to say there's a little gray alien here. Right? It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to have a reason why there is a little gray alien. Well, these guys are the same thing, except it doesn't matter what you say, they're going to have a reason why it cannot be, even though their argument is like waving a magic wand, right? I mean, what kind of argument is it to say, oh, the camera just lost its focusing ability? That must be what it was. Because then 5 seconds later, the object comes out of the water. So what are you going to argue now? Oh, it got its focusing ability back. Oh, it disappeared again, lost its focusing ability. I mean, it's just like.
Yeah. And if you had to guess how, as far as distance in the water, how long was it in the water?
It was only in the water for, I think the longest time was maybe 7 or 8 seconds.
And about how many, would you say, 100 yards or something?
Oh, that would have moved in 7 or 8 seconds?
Yeah.
Well, let's see.
Oh, it
if
wouldn't be
it's
that.
moving at 60 miles an hour, that's a mile a minute, right? So a
Yeah.
mile a minute is
You don't have to try to do the
10
math.
seconds. Yeah, about 500 feet.
Oh, so it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that? Interesting. And I saw I actually watched that video when it goes into the water, and that is just baffling.
Yeah.
And you can actually see this video up. It's somewhere on YouTube, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's on YouTube. If they Google Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, UFO, Homeland Security, they'll pull it up.
And what did the Homeland Security, did they do their own investigation?
Before I answer that question, actually, they can go to the SCU website, explorescu.org, and we've got it on our website.
Yes, that's right.
To YouTube. Yeah. And no, as far as I know, Homeland Security never investigated.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? Don't you think that's another case that they would really want to find out what the heck it was?
It's like a sociological issue with people in general. I don't think it's a cover up. It's like, because they were passing it around in their office, right? Like, what is it? Wow, we can't, but no one really investigated it. Okay, I'm going to take this back, Martin. When we first talked to them, they did. They sent it to the Air Force at Quantico, I believe, in Quantico, Virginia. Sent it to them. And the guy told us that 2 weeks later, the Air Force sent him back a reply. Why don't you go talk to a UFO organization?
Really?
I mean, I was just like, are you kidding?
How about that?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
So now maybe they really did investigate it. Who knows? And they just told those guys that, go talk to you. That's possible. But I think it's probably likely that's exactly what they said.
How about that? Wow.
And did nothing with it.
Going to current events, I'm sure you saw this thing about in the Utah desert with the monolith that showed up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have so many emails I've been getting from people. A lot of people are thinking it's aliens. I personally think it's, and then it showed up in Bulgaria, I believe it was.
Yeah, that was a different looking.
Not Bulgaria, somewhere else.
Poland, maybe. I think it was Poland.
Yeah. Anyway, somewhere else in the world it showed up, whether it's the same one or not. I think it's.
No, it was different.
Is it? I think
we
someone's
had
having some fun.
Chain
yeah.
On the SCU talking about it, and it was kind of a.
I would think it would be a great art project or whatever to put something out, and hopefully it's discovered. And if so, they got all the media that they could possibly ever want out of that. Boy, they got a lot of mileage. So here's a question that came up from Stephen. Can UFOs be using technologies we have yet to comprehend, which explains UFO footage?
I'm not sure about that last part of the question, but I would agree. UFOs display technology which we don't understand. That doesn't mean it necessarily violates physics, but we don't understand how it operates.
Oh, by the way, thank you, Janice. That's Romania is where that thing showed up.
Okay, we got close. Bulgaria and Poland, we were all around it. At least we got Eastern Europe right.
Yeah, that's right. I think I'm going to put up right now, if anyone wants to call in, it's going to be just a little bit different, but I will let Bill know he's going to be screening over at KGRA Radio. He will take your call and talk to you and let me know that you were there. So that number is 855-472-5483, and Bill is standing by. Unfortunately, I can't see when calls come in, but Bill will let me know when that does happen. Now, the same gentlemen or gentlemen and women that you actually did that study with for that Puerto Rican object, whatever it was, did you in turn study something else? I mean, this was sort of the beginning of the SCU too, wasn't it?
Right. That was the first major case the SCU did. Then the next case that we did was the Uss Nimitz case. And that took, I think I started on that case. I'm trying to remember the middle of 2016 is when I began sending FOIAs to the Navy. And then that went on throughout 2017. And then I did the interview on your show, I think October or November 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And then the New York Times, their story came out, I think it was December 17th, 2017.
Yeah, December 16, 2017.
Right.
Yeah.
And we finally finished the report and released it. I think it was in like August of 2018. So that was about 2 years.
And in between when we talked in late 2017 and 2018, when you finished your report, was there a lot more things that you uncovered? And as far as like FOIAs?
Oh, you mean from after when I did your show?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there was quite a bit because in addition to talking to Kevin Day, right? And I talked to Kevin Day, Martin, before he ever got involved in Facebook or talked to other people. So that was a fresh interview of him. Then I found Gary Voris.
Right.
I found him by actually going onto the USS Princeton Facebook site.
Huh.
And if you go to my report, like whoever this new guy is you have, you can pull up my report and do a Google search on the report, or do a search for his name, and you'll see if I had picked him up on Facebook, because I would say on Facebook there were a total of 7 to 8 sailors talking about that back in 2009 to 10. And so I basically messaged every one of them. Gary Voris was one that replied back to me. And so I was able to interview him. And then there was another gentleman who replied back to me. Gosh, I can't think of his name at the moment. He was one of the first witnesses. And so I interviewed him. But there were 2 or 3 guys. There was a cryptologist on there.
Really?
In a crypto group that was talking about it. But I never could get him to, reply to me so that I could interview him. But it was clear to me as soon as I saw that Facebook site that, this story had legs, as they say.
Wow.
And,
yeah.
The amazing thing is you have all these different ships that had radar that were capable of detecting this object. And yet all that data, it's just cubbyholed somewhere.
I know. And do you think there's still more doors to open? Do you think that we'll actually get more? I'm looking for the gentleman's name right now.
I don't, unless the Navy releases the data, I'm just not sure what more can be done with the case. Because in my mind, there's no doubt it happened. I think that's finished and dusted, as they say. The issue is, could we get data? Imagine if we could get their radar data that the USS Princeton was tracking this object, right? We could know the actual acceleration numbers. We could know the exact speed the object traveled at. And there might even be additional information you could get.
Right. I know that this witness's first name is Brian. That's all I have. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back to the report because there were, like I said, 8 or 9 guys talking about it. And I was only able to get 2 of them to reply to my requests.
Whoops, I think we might, let's see. Yeah, we have someone ready. It looks like we have Steve from Pasadena on the line. Steve, can you hear me? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. My question is, other than Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physics scientist, why haven't scientists taken up this UFO phenomena and studied it. Why is it we can't get science to look at this?
Well, actually, Steve, we are within the SCU. We have a number of teams that are looking at it. I mean, we've got a number of physicists that are within the SCU, as well as engineers. So we're actually actively looking at it. The problem is getting the real data. It's hard to make a science report based on purely witness data. What we really need is the raw radar data, for example.
And anything you'd like to add to that, Stephen?
Just one more question, if I may. Do you believe that we have some kind of material that we have and that's been studied that's from a UFO?
Well, that's not, I can't say absolutely that we don't, but I seriously doubt it. I just, and that's just based on all the research I've done and all the reading I've done. I don't believe that we have in hand. I mean, okay, I'm going to take, there might be like a piece of something, right? But I don't believe we have, like it from Roswell, any technology that we've got our hands on that we tried to reverse engineer. Is that what you meant, the latter?
Yes, sir. And I just want to thank you for taking this scientific approach to this phenomena, because that's what we really need. We need the minds behind this looking at it. And thank you.
You're welcome. And we need the data so those minds can analyze it.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Steve. All right. Next, we have John. Looks like John's calling from New York. Hi, John. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Very good to talk to you, Martin. I watch your show all the time. Well, I've been interested in UFOs all my life. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just the thought of something different. But my question really is actually toward Bob Lazar and Bob's Bizarre. He said now his story's changed. Now they said they dug up these UFOs. And he never said that in the past about digging up UFOs, and then also a thing about him is I always questioned, he said he went to MIT, right? And he never mentioned living in, Massachusetts. He had to go there to go to MIT. He never mentioned going there at all, ever. I was just curious about that, what your thoughts were on that.
Well, my main problem, John, I guess with it is he claims that element 110 is what powers these UFOs. Well,
115?
Maybe it's is it 115? Either way, from element 110 clear to element 115, those elements are artificially produced, and they exist for usually a millisecond or a microsecond, and then you lose, and then they begin to dissipate. So it's it just doesn't make sense to me how you could use any of those as an energy source.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to it, because I always get in trouble when it comes to Bob Lazar. I always get emails after I talk about him. But my thought is to your point, John, and that is he was at a public like a conference, and people were asking him. I mentioned this on the show before, but people were asking him questions from the audience. It was live. He couldn't dodge the question. And someone said to him, okay, Bob, you went to MIT. What was the square right outside of MIT? And anyone that's spent a day at MIT knows that it's Kendall Square. And he said, I can't recall. So that just to me right then and there says he never set foot in MIT, for any amount of time.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So I don't know.
Beginning, he started out, it was kind of believable. Then it went downhill from there. It just started to get on my nerves. But that's my question and a thought on your thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
All right. Thanks for the call. So the line's open, everyone. And again, that number is 855-472-5483. Your call is welcome. And let's see. Looks like we got someone else calling in. So I will. He was trying to write me. He messed up. He said noon on hold, and he meant to say no one is on hold.
Yeah. So, the other thing I can comment real quick, Martin, on reverse engineering, right?
Sure.
So I worked in the semiconductor field, and we reverse engineered our competitors' microprocessors all the time. And let me tell you, that is very difficult. And that's a science, right? That's a competitor who's at the same level of understanding as us, and it takes us months to years. Imagine taking like an F-18, well, not even that, just take your cell phone and give it to the greatest scientists of 150 years ago.
Yeah.
They would never reverse engineer it. Would never happen.
I know. I mean, and there are theories, people are saying, well, there's also some people that actually do believe that there's crash material and that it's being looked at. That was also in James Fox's latest film. They didn't have a material scientist actually analyze it. They had Nolan over at Stanford, a very good scientist, but still not exactly the right person to analyze it. So and even so, what would make something definitive that it's for extraterrestrial? Just to have some type of technology in the fabrication that we can't reproduce?
Yeah, I mean, even, it's a big even if we got our hands on a piece of material that was built by another civilization, even if it's just a little piece. There's nothing we could do with it. At the very most, we might be able to determine, yes, this was not built here. And then that's about all you could do with it.
And what else could you can't say, so it's definitely alien. There's no definitive way to say this was an alien made unless you had a whole craft, or at least
exactly. You'd need
a quarter panel.
Right. You'd need something like a cell phone or their communication device or something like that you could clearly say. I mean, because on elementary analysis, you could determine that the isotope ratios of a material are foreign to this earth, right? So, but that's all it tells you. It just tells you it does not appear to have been made here. But where did it come from? You don't know. I mean, is it a piece of a meteorite?
Yeah.
A lost asteroid chunk?
Exactly. Well, we have Mike from Cincinnati. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Gentlemen, hi. I'll ask my question and then I'll take the answer off air.
Sure.
Robert mentioned the Puerto Rican UFO hardly displaced any water when it entered the sea. I'm wondering about when it came back out, if it pulled any water behind it.
Interesting.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the call, Mike.
No, that's a good question, Mike. When it came out of the water, there was no water that was pulled up along with it either. So apparently it was able to enter and leave the water with just very minor disturbance of the water.
Was any, Robert, was any of the, skeptics or debunkers, as you mentioned, trying to say that there was a wave in front of it, so it looked like it went in the water?
A wave in front? No, I haven't heard that. The only two arguments I've heard to say it did not really go in the water. One is that, the clouds, some cloud must have obscured the object from the IR lens, right?
Yeah.
And then the second argument was that the camera just lost its ability to resolve the object at that point in time.
Yeah. So, yeah, nothing definitive. Now, when the SCU is actually looking at a case, how do you go about that? I mean, how do you decide what case you're going to take on, and who are the people that get involved within, if they have some type of related science background to what you're looking at?
Yep. Well, the first step is trying to determine, is there enough data to make the case worth analyzing? And most of the time, the answer is no, so we stop right there. I mean, I'll give you an example. The 2015 videos, right, that you've seen that TTSA has released. That's a very interesting video, you know, because you've got pilots talking about, you know, what in the heck is that, right? But we don't have those pilots' testimony. And a video by itself is similar to just testimony by itself. I mean, you really need both of those supporting each other. So we haven't really looked at the 2015 case because there's just not enough testimony supporting exactly what was going on.
I got it. Okay. Someone wanted to know, Adam wanted to know, why do you seem to be unconvinced by innate gravity as propulsion for these craft?
Because these craft exhibit, when we did a paper on the Nimitz case, and the accelerations went into hundreds of G-forces. So that acceleration is a function of the inertial mass of an object and how fast it can accelerate. You could take gravity out of the equation, right? I mean, just make the Earth disappear. You still can't accelerate rapidly unless you've got either, number one, a huge power supply behind you, or number two, your mass has been reduced significantly. And so you're not having to accelerate a large. So to me, gravity has nothing to do with it, right? All gravity does, our gravity is one G-force. When you drop towards the Earth, you're moving at 1 G. So, and you know, you could eliminate the Earth's gravity. All you're talking about is 1 G. And these things are displaying hundreds of G-forces.
Now, is mass and displacement two different things?
I'm not sure.
All right, I'm going to say the object was about 40. I'm talking about the Tic Tac. The object was somewhere around 40 to 45 feet long.
Right.
And then, you know, it drops from 60,000 feet down to a few feet above the ocean in a matter of, I forget what it was, 1.7 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, 0.78 seconds, according to Kevin Day.
So if this thing had the displacement, the shape of 45 feet, but is that different than the mass of 45 feet? You know, the weight, say it could have no weight and still displace that?
Right. Its shape controls how much air resistance. You know,
right. Yes. Like even a balloon would have air resistance. Yes.
Right. Yeah. But its weight, whether it weighs 1 gram or weighs 40,000 pounds, it's going to move towards the Earth with just a force of 1 G.
Yeah.
Independent. That's Galileo's experiment. Remember, he drops
the feather in the
yeah, and they'll both hit
in the vacuum.
time.
Yeah,
right.
Feather in the hammer.
So you can get rid of that gravity, and that, to me, that does not explain what these craft are capable of doing.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, you know, some of these things should have like be a ball of flame. Is this the case with the Nimitz? Should that have been a ball of flame?
Absolutely. The speed of that object was well over 20,000 miles an hour at low altitude. I mean, it should have been like a meteorite. Just not only would you have a ball of flame, the atmosphere around it would be just almost explosively moving away from it. So
and
just
is
like
there
a meteorite moving through the atmosphere.
Is there any constructed craft that we could have that would take a G-force like that?
No.
Everything would fall apart.
Yeah, an artillery shell has like 50 or 60 Gs. An F-16 can handle, I think, around 14 or 15 Gs. F-18 won't handle that much.
But like a missile, say a missile, with a
missile
warhead
could,
on it or something.
Yeah, it could handle more Gs. I'm not sure how high a missile could handle.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing, probably around 50 Gs, but I don't know. It's probably more of a function of the internal components, and when your internal components get damaged from the G forces.
Wow. Let's see. This is a quote on air resistance. Do you agree with the statement that Jeff put up there? Does that make any sense to you?
Well, like lasers, the reason they're able to use high-powered lasers is they do these very extremely rapid bursts where the first laser front basically pulverizes the atmosphere, and then your main laser comes right behind it. And so that's how you're able to get a high-powered laser to move through the atmosphere. Same thing we do to look at stars with the newest telescopes, is that a laser light basically causes the atmosphere to part in that area, just for a very brief moment in time. But you can't use it to like allow a jet aircraft to fly through the atmosphere without resistance.
Yeah.
That's when they do that with a laser, you're talking like, I think it's like in picoseconds that the one laser flashes and the next one comes behind it.
Yeah. I think there was a physicist named Mirabeau, something like that. Do you know that? Have you heard that name?
No.
Mirabeau. That was talking about propulsion with plasma. Plasma in front of it. None of that rings a bell. All right, I'll change the subject.
Yeah.
Because I may have that off a little bit, but we're going to wrap here in just 1 minute. So just if you would tell people where they can find the book, and is it on Amazon?
Right. It's on Amazon. Yeah. It's on Barnes and Noble. There's a hardback, which I think is the nicest for a gift, or you can do paperback. It's also in Kindle. And if someone wanted an autograph copy, I have a limited number of those, but if they sent you an email, Martin, then you could forward it to me and I could work out with them to get them a autograph.
That sounds like a great idea. All right, Robert, thank you so much. Always fun talking to you.
Yeah, same here, Martin.
All right,
Thanks
you take care. All right, thank you. Yeah, bye. All right, everyone. So that's it for the show. We'll be back next week with Melanie Kirkendorfer from the Berkshire's UFO. Should be a great one. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, everyone, to keep your eyes to the sky. And I can't find my close video.